Greetings from my tub. I'm in here getting 5% cash back when I pay in full with PayPal. No fees, no interest. Make the most of your money this holiday with PayPal. Save the offer in the app.
Ends 12/31. See paypal.com/promo terms. Points can be redeemed for cash and more. Pay in for subject to terms and approval. PayPal link and MLS 910457.
Tires matter. They're the only part of your vehicle that touches the road. Tread confidently with new tires from Tire Rack. Whether you're looking for expert recommendations or know exactly what you want, Tire Rack makes it easy. Fast, free shipping, free road hazard protection, convenient installation options, and the best selection of Vredestein tires. Go to TireRack.com to see their Vredestein test results, tire ratings, and reviews, and be sure to check out all the special offers. TireRack.com, the way tire buying should be.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the left versus the right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
It's 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, November the 1st, the first day of the month. And I am happy to be joined by my great friend and colleague, the Honorable Richard Weinberg, who does the 5 o'clock shows with Rita Cosby and John Catsimatidis, and has actually extended himself to work a little overtime here today and to talk to us about the left versus the right. Before the show, before we started, I was talking to the judge about President Trump, how his negotiating skills are really just in a league of their own. Now, sometimes what he does after he's finished winning negotiation is a problem. But in China, I think they realized they were up against this country who has really the greatest supply of rare minerals and those types of products that they don't have to get into a negotiation. But they also have a tariff, which President Trump reduced, and so they got it done the other day, at least to their satisfaction for now. And we move on. What say you, Your Honor?
Well, I have to give President Trump his due. He is a great negotiator. He's a great strategist when it comes to negotiations. Sometimes he's very successful. Sometimes he overtalks his hand. He raises expectations sometimes unnecessarily. The name of the game in negotiations is you keep the expectations in check, and then you get the results you want, and you don't brag about it too much after. At least that's the way I always did my negotiations, which were fairly successful in its time, not at his level, of course. But let me say this about that in the immortal words of President Richard Nixon. I think he's very successful on this China trip, in part. It's very important that we get the rare earths, but we're only going to get it for a year. That's part of the deal. And he's rolling back the tariffs from 20% to 10%. But understand who Trump is dealing with. He's dealing with Xi, who's trying to maintain his power, and he has internal issues going on. Whether he survives or not, we don't know. There have been purges of the upper echelons of the military. Now, whether he's behind it, whether he's gone along with it, whether it's been forced upon him, we don't know. But there's an internal fights going on about the future internally of the party, which of course controls the government. So that's very, very important on that issue to understand that Xi is under his own pressure. Second thing we have to understand is China is dedicated to long-term domination of the world.
Right. They don't talk in terms of months and years. They talk in terms of centuries.
Exactly right. So to say that they play a long game and we're in the business of immediate gratification is not exactly an exaggeration, Governor. And my problem is that they really do have a vision of what they're doing. The Belt and Road Initiative that they created, where they have incursions all around the world, whether it's Africa, whether it's Asia, whether it's in Latin America. It's a very serious business. Now, their economy, however, is in big trouble, which is why Xi is in political trouble back home. So he needed a deal, and Trump likes winning a deal. He loves announcing deals, and he's transactional. He likes deals. But having said that, let me segue to a different topic, which has just raised its ugly head again, and I'm very concerned about, and that's on a domestic front. Governors, you and I both know there's a government shutdown, which is now in its 29th or 30th day.
Yes.
And this is correctly described as the Schumer shutdown because it's all about Chuck Schumer and his political ambitions to maintain a seat in the Senate and maintain his leadership of the Democrats in the United States Senate. This is the problem. Trump has thrown out the idea that the Republicans in the Senate should go to the nuclear option being blowing up the filibuster. I respectfully submit to the President of the United States that's a grave mistake because there'll be a different day when the Democratic Party will control the White House and the Senate and the House. That time will come again. It's only a question of when because of the cycles of political history. And when you don't have the filibuster is a safeguard against radical proposals. So if you like the idea of having Puerto Rico recognized as a state, or District of Columbia recognized as a state, or establishing Green New Deal energy policy for everybody all across the country, or giving illegal migrants the right to vote in our elections, or other ridiculous ideas such as that, you block it by having the filibuster, which requires 60 votes to overturn a filibuster, and it's very, very hard to get, as we see from this continuing resolution fight. What say you, Governor?
And they even picked up 4 or 5 Democrats, but it's still not near the amount they would need to end the shutdown. I agree with you that the nuclear approach that Trump is suggesting could really do more harm than good. You've already got a bunch of people who have been up too late at night. They're antagonized by each other. They have resorted to acrimony instead of negotiation. And I don't know that it would be a good idea to fuel the fire with some more threats against the individual senators.
The filibuster is absolutely essential to maintain sanity in our public policy. If it's abolished, then a simple majority, 51 votes, or 50-50 with the vice president breaking the tie, can make national policy for everybody on all kinds of issues, whether it's national defense, whether it's energy, whether it's trade deals, whether it's military incursions or lack of a military incursion, whether it's ridiculous deals like Obama foisted upon this country with the Iran nuclear deal, which sold out America and sold out our allies in the Middle East.
I think the worst executive decision in the last half a century.
The Obama deal with Iran.
Absolutely.
Of course. What did he do? He feathered the nest, gave the resources to Iran to foster terrorism all around the world. It's not just a Middle Eastern problem. The terrorism goes all around the world that Iran has been behind, whether it's in our country, whether it's in Europe, whether it's Africa, whether it's Asia. Fuels terrorists, fuels Islamists who are dedicated to the proposition that nobody else has a right to live and think and worship the way they want to individually, but it has to be governed by Sharia law, which shows no tolerance at all for a divergent point of view or practice. And that's very troubling.
It is. And, I always felt from the time he was a candidate in 2008 that Obama was a charmer. He never said anything that really was that antagonistic. He didn't get into fights with people. They'd ask him about one question, he'd answer to another one to the point that you'd forget what the question was he was asked in the first place. And he gets in the White House, and I thought that this, charming gig would end up when he got in the White House, but he was more docile than ever. But when you weren't looking, below the radar, he was up to things that he knew the public really wouldn't accept but he was trying to do them as much without notice as possible.
Well, here he was, the first black president of the United States. And here he had this historic opportunity to bring this nation together. And yet, racial relations worsened under his leadership far more than in recent times. Not necessary for that. He had anti-cop rhetoric. He always played the race card when he wanted to. His mantra of hope and change only led me during his years to say I was hoping for a change to get him out, because I thought he was a terrible president, and I saw immediately that it was just a charm boy. He was picked because he was a charm boy, and as you correctly point out, he was not offensive. So as Biden said about him, he was a good-looking guy, well kept, or whatever exact words that Biden said, and here he was, an articulate black guy. And there's time in history to elect a black as president. I'm all for having minorities as long as they're tolerant for other divergent points of view as presidents. I'm not interested in fostering radical ideologies. So his anti-cop, his racial divisiveness, his encouragement of Iran, which allowed to the disruption all across the world.
And let me, if you don't mind, Your Honor, let me stop you right there. What is it about Iran that tickled the former president's fancy? He was always giving things to Iran, meeting with the leaders, speaking positively about them in public when they were killing people. And for some reason, that, tumult that he was creating was getting worse and worse, and he's still floating along, just thinking that he'll get Iran to do something for us. Iran has not done anything for us in, a century. Maybe they did something back then?
No, well, they did stuff with us when the Shah was there, but when the mullahs took over, that was the end of the game.
Yeah.
It was a whole different world when the mullahs came in. It was not a coincidence, David, when they would shout in the streets, "Death to Israel, death to America." They meant it. And when they tell you that this is a never-ending war and they're hegemonic in terms of the extreme Islamist politics and theology, they weren't kidding. When people tell you they want to kill you, you should take them seriously.
Absolutely.
And that was the mistake he made. And of course, then he went around the world on an apology tour. What are you apologizing for? For American leadership that led to peaceful situations and resolutions of conflict after World War II? What are you apologizing for? Stopping fascism during World War II? Stopping communism in the Cold War? What is America apologizing for? America gives more to the world than America gets back. America is always there when there's a crisis, a national disaster, is always there trying to give medicine and health care and education and economic aid. So what are we apologizing for? That there's an American-led world order? American-led world order led to a peace.
Very well stated by a very fine statesman. We are talking with former Judge Richard Weinberg here on the left versus the right. He and I don't know where the left and the right are, so we just come in and kind of let you know how we feel about things. And that whole era was just very strange. It really was. And in 2016, when Donald Trump came on the scene and ran against Hillary Clinton, it changed everything.
Well, doing a political analysis, Governor, I think the reason Trump won in 2016 is people were sick to death of left-wing Democratic Party wokeism and condescension and self-righteousness and bad public policy. And Hillary herself was not an attractive candidate because she didn't bring people together. She alienated a whole bunch of people. People were tired. So by the time the Donald took the escalator down from Trump Tower to run, people had pretty much had it with the Democratic Party.
And you know what's interesting? I think, and I don't actually blame Hillary for this, although she might have been responsible for it. She was probably the most politically active first lady that we'd seen. She didn't just come around to dinners and talk about how wonderful the president is at home and that kind of thing. She was out there. You know, she was...
She's the one who tried to have a national health program that failed on its face.
Yeah. And so when 2016 came upon us, I think there was some feeling among most voters that, you know what, are we going to give you all a third term? Like 2 for Bill, 1 for you, and then you'll have a 4th term? They wanted to put a stop to it. And, I mean, I voted for her, but I'm just saying that it really seemed like it was an errant mission, and it turned out that it was.
Look, I think so certainly she's an exceptionally intelligent person, well educated, understood public policy. I think given who the Democrats have run subsequently, which includes Biden and Harris, she was an A+, and I put those two at a D-/F level, and then that's being
you're
kind
a tough
and generous.
grader.
Well, you know, all those 20 years I was a law professor that helped grading deficient students. No, I mean, can you actually think in the last election of a worse team than Harris and Walz? I mean, can you actually,
No.
Democrat to Democrat, can you think of people who are actually the worst possible people you could have, other than socialists or Islamists, as your candidate in the Democratic Party? And they were just raging mediocrities.
And I felt that Harris showed us an arrogance that we would get more accustomed to as the campaign went on by picking Walz, because really the odds-on choice should have been the governor, Josh Shapiro, from Pennsylvania, who even Republicans have some nice things to say about from time to time. But I always felt that the reason she took Walz is she didn't want Shapiro outshining her. She didn't want anybody looking as if they knew more than she did. And actually, most presidents, when they pick the vice presidential candidate, they're trying to pick somebody who can help them. And I thought that was a real problem for her. I do have a story to tell you about your friend President Obama.
Well, he and I are very tight friends. We go bowling every Tuesday.
So my story goes back to 2008, and this was when the Obama now, has more votes than Hillary. It's over. And so, Your Honor, I get this call, and the call's from the White House. And they said that there's going to be a press conference on Friday. You're going to lead the press conference, and we're going to have all the black congressmen come out and endorse Obama. Now, they had endorsed Hillary. Obama's now won. And to me, it was like rubbing their noses in it that he won in spite of them. And so I told them, I'm not going to do it. They said, what do you mean you're not going to do it? This is the nominee has asked you to do this. I said, I really don't care. And if he'd like to discuss it, he can call me. So he calls me. And when he calls me, I said to him, Mr. President, you're going to win New York. It's a blue state. You need money because New York and California are the states that give the candidates the most money. So why are you fooling around with a few people who endorse their home senator? They're loyal. And you would have done it and did do it when you were in Illinois. So you don't need to be doing this. And he said, I never thought of that. And I said to him, there are a few things you haven't thought of. And on that note, we will break for a commercial. And when we come back, you'll find out how that dog came back to bite me.
It's the left versus the right. The left versus the right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the left versus the right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
Well, Governor, when we broke, you were going to tell our listeners and me how the dog came back to bite you after that first conversation with Barack Obama.
Well, I knew that the whole time I was governor, that a certain elected official, I won't give his name, but his initials are Andrew Cuomo, were looking for me to make a mistake so that they could try to start pushing me out. I think that when they reached out to the White House to see if it would be okay to start trying to push me out, even though I had passed 2 budgets on time, which nobody had done in 10 or 15 years. Now, I know that Governor Cuomo, when he became the governor, passed 10 digits on time, which I tip my hat to him. That was great. But that problem manufactured itself to where it was clear that the White House wanted me to leave. They didn't have any reason they wanted me to leave. So they send this minion named Patrick Gaspar to see me. And he says, we need you to get out because we don't think you can beat Mayor Giuliani. And Mayor Giuliani is going to be running for governor. I said, my understanding is Mayor Giuliani is not running for governor. He says, no, we know what's happening. Like when we ran against McCain, we knew what to do with McCain. We know everything that Giuliani does, and he's running for governor of New York. I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to continue running, and the minute Mayor Giuliani gets in, and you can record this if you want, I will have a press conference and announce I'm not running for re-election. Well, that was the last thing they wanted me to say because they didn't know whether Giuliani was running or not. It was just crap.
Gambit. It was just a gambit.
To get me to come over to their point of view. So when that didn't work, then there was this anonymous conversation that someone spoke to the president, and the president said, we've got to get rid of that governor from New York. It was highly insulting and annoying because normally if he did something like that, I'd have picked up the phone and called him. I decided I wasn't going to call him. And they went on in 2010 to lose 64 congressional seats because their campaign techniques were totally infantile, puerile, callow, anything that would describe failure. And they lost all of those seats in 2010. And a lot of it, I thought, was because Obama was spending all this time gossiping and playing footsie with people and helping candidates run against people that he thought, had annoyed him. And that is why I just try not to be insulting, but when the name of the former president comes up, I usually don't respond.
Well, let's do this. You mentioned Andrew Cuomo, and coming up in a couple of days, we're going to have people going to the polls live. They've had early voting, and we have a mayoral race that I want to talk to you about. Now, I've described this mayoral race as the most important mayoral race in my lifetime. And why do I say that? You have 3 candidates. I mean, you have other candidates, but you really have 3 candidates of any recognition. One is a couple of term or one-term assembly member named Mondami. The other is the former governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo. The third is the fellow who founded and leads the Guardian Angels, who's been making his living for years and years and years, either on TV or radio as a talk show, talking jock, a commentary, an opinionator. Okay, those are 3 people. Now, Andrew Cuomo ran in the June primary, one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen. And he lost the primary.
You know, when you say ran, it was more like he walked, because he never seemed to come to events. They would have these candidates nights. There weren't debates, but he wouldn't come to them. He admitted to me that his pollsters said he was up 15 points, so he didn't think he had to do that.
He figured he'd slide through.
Yeah, and, you know, when you're up by 15 points, that's a good time to try to go for 20.
Well, I agree with you, and you and I know a little bit about politics in our own ways. So let's go back to the June campaign. He's running against who? Mandami. Okay, Mandami is a Muslim. I have nothing against Muslims. I do have something against Islamists for the reasons we talked about earlier.
It's great that you make that distinction.
And it's an important distinction. I don't want to have a race war. I don't want to have a religious war. I want people to respect each other and have tolerance for other diverse points of view. But I don't believe that Muslims have a right to go into Europe or Africa or Asia or America and impose their religious views at the point of a sword, literally and figuratively, and to suppress any dissident religious views. You just pick up newspapers or Gatestone or National Review and you read about the terrorism foisted upon innocent people just practicing religion by the Islamists. You know, they destroy Buddhist shrines, Hindu shrines, they persecute Christians. So it's not just the Jews who are the victims of these Islamists. And people should not forget this is a view that sees any other religion other than, and by the way, they kill each other because you have factions within the Muslim community. Some are very tolerant people and want to work together and evolve and make the world a better place. And others are just interested in world domination. But you have this Islamist kid who's an apologist for Hamas. He's an apologist for worldwide intifada, which means political violence and kill your opponents and intimidation. He's also a socialist. He wants to have free stuff for everything, totally economically unsustainable, impractical to do politically, unsustainable economically, and will have the net result that will drive the productive people out of the city and the state of New York. Why do I say that? Because if you have the money and the resources to leave and you don't have to be in New York, you will leave. You can still do business remotely. You can still make your money, but you can live in Florida, Texas, or the Carolinas. You don't need to be in the city of New York, and people will flee. In the last half dozen years, Governor, we've had about 400,000 or 500,000 people who already fled. Just imagine when you have a large number of people who are no longer going to feel safe. He's anti-cop. He's anti-law enforcement. He wants social workers on the payroll rather than cops. When you have riots and demonstrations, what is he going to do? Is he going to let them go by saying it's freedom of speech when they're tearing up Columbia University or NYU? When you need cooperation between the federal authorities and local authorities because of terrorism, is he going to look the other way or not support undercover operations that need to be done in the Muslims community where terrorists are being harbored? This is a very serious question. What say you?
But in spite of these allegations that you've made, I think he's a pretty good guy.
Oh, I think he's just well. if you want to sell out of New York and New York State and America, by all means, you vote that way. So let's go back to the election. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah.
You know, I used to say he's a wonderful guy. I'd love to have dinner with him, but I won't vote for him. I don't want to have dinner with him. I don't want to talk to him or vote. Certainly not vote for him.
Well, I think one thing that has eluded my understanding is that when he was confronted with these direct questions, like taking a picture with the imam who was an unindicted co-conspirator
or his mentor is Linda Saussure, who's a radical activist.
Exactly.
Right.
Or, then there was, I guess we got those two. But there were some others.
Well, how about the deputy speaker of Uganda Parliament who wants the death penalty for gays?
That was the one that was missing.
And he said, we barely knew her. Well, she's a lifelong friend of the family.
Lifelong friend of the family, and so was the imam.
Of course. And he said, I don't know anything about that, or I don't use those words.
Now,
really?
I've been very surprised and disappointed that our colleagues in the media have not pushed these points as well as they could have. They just seem
That's one of the failures of the June campaign.
Yes.
The Cuomo campaign should have been raising it, and the media should have been covering it.
Exactly. And that's why here we are 3 days before November 4th dealing with this issue. And I think that the former governor has closed the gap. I don't think it'll be over 10 points, but I don't know if there's enough for him to take the lead over Mamdani.
That's a good segue, Governor, because that takes us to the third candidate in this race, which is our mutual friend, former colleague here at WABC, one Curtis Sliwa. Now, I've said this for a long time. Curtis Sliwa should do the right thing, and he should not be running. Even now, in the waning days of this campaign, he should say, I'm urging all my followers, all my voters, to vote for Andrew Cuomo, because the choice between Cuomo and Mamdani is no choice at all. You're fighting for the survival of the city, of the state, and of the country. You cannot allow this kind of radical, intolerant, dangerous kid, totally inexperienced, to do a $116 billion budget, turn over the whole power of the mayoralty over to him. A terrible idea. So where is Curtis Sliwa doing the right thing? What's with this guy?
And in addition to that, now he insults the polls like they don't know what they're talking about. He says that the people who are really voting are the people who are on the subway. So he rides around on the subway all the time. He made, obviously, he had a Captain Queeg meltdown, as I called it at the time, on Sid's morning show, saying that he would never set foot into the 800 3rd Avenue building at ABC. He quits because everybody stabbed him in the back, he says. And then he goes on from there to just incite more controversy than actually getting support. But I've known Curtis a long time, and this is what I can tell you. Curtis could be the spoiler. Andrew's vote plus Curtis's vote could be 5 points more than what Mamdani gets. And Curtis would probably like that more than if he actually won, because his aim in life is not to improve quality of life, to set the record straight on issues. His aim in life is to get attention. He is an attention machine.
Well, that doesn't bode well for the future of New York City.
No, apparently not.
Because I have to tell you something. If the margin of victory for Mamdani is because of the Curtis vote on the Republican line, I think that'll be wrapped around Curtis's neck for the rest of his life.
The rest of his life. If Mamdani wins, say, and Governor Cuomo finishes second 5 points back, and Curtis is at, whatever, 18, 19, whatever, there would have been enough votes there for Andrew to have won. He better hope that that doesn't come to reality. And then the way he's treated his colleagues here, and the things he's had to say about them, and the same day that he walked out and said he'd never be back was the day after he said he wasn't working for John Catsimatidis. So I said, so in other words, Curtis quit the job that he didn't have.
Well, look, I think Curtis has a real problem. He can glory in the next few days. I think one of his strategies is to see if he can get more votes than Cuomo and then go around saying, look at me, if you'd only backed me, I would have won.
Right.
What that, of course, forgets is no Republican can win the mayoralty of the city of New York unless they're a true fusion candidate. And Curtis Sliwa has never made any efforts about being a true fusion candidate. He's only appealed to his own Republican base. You don't have enough Republicans to have a chance to win alone. Every Republican governor, strike that, every Republican mayor that we've had throughout history in the 20th century and now 21st century, it's always been somebody who's a fusion candidate. What's a fusion candidate?
John Lindsay.
That's right. Means Republican plus another line. So LaGuardia was a fusion candidate. Lindsay was a fusion candidate. Bloomberg was a fusion candidate. Giuliani was a fusion candidate. Sliwa made no efforts to reach out beyond his base. And his base is not Staten Island. If he was running for borough president of Staten Island, maybe he could win that. But that's not what you have in the other four boroughs. So he totally overestimated his appeal. Republicans cannot win alone, especially somebody who's identified as a talking head, a radio show guy without any real legitimate administrative or governmental experience. So Curtis, I say to you again, get out, back Cuomo. You don't have to love Cuomo, but your choice is Cuomo or somebody who will disrupt and destroy the city of New York. This is very serious business. I don't know why. And by the way, a lot of Republicans are now coming over and they're moving away from Sliwa, including elected officials who are doing it. You've had members of Congress doing it.
Michael Lawler,
who you and I were with last night.
Yes.
Michael Lawler hasn't officially endorsed, but he's made very clear you got to stop Mondami, and the guy who can do it is Cuomo.
That was actually one of my favorite parts of our show Thursday night when Lawler gave all the reasons why you can't vote for Curtis, and then one of us, it wasn't me, but one of us.
No, it wasn't you or me.
It was
somebody else. Somebody else.
And they said, so you've endorsed Andrew Cuomo, and he said, oh, no. That ladder would be too high for me. That's a bridge too far for me.
Well, Lawler's a smart guy, and he's in a tough district. He probably has one of the toughest districts in the country for the Republicans.
And one of the more intellectual and fair-minded people that I've met in my time, and I've met him twice in my life, talked to him only when he was a guest on our show. And that's where that's where it is with him.
Lawler's an outstanding guy. He's just terrific. The country is lucky to have somebody of that ability in the U.S. Congress.
It would have been interesting if he had gambled with his congressional seat and perhaps thought about running for governor or something like that.
Well, I think he'd be an excellent candidate. I think part of the problem is there's a lot of pressure on him to hold on to that seat because I think both the state and the national Republicans believe that he's the only person who can hold on to that seat because it's really a swing seat with favorable. I think there are about 80,000 more Democrats in that district than Republicans, and yet he's the guy who can hold it. And that's why I think there's a lot of pressure on him to hold the seat.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we will take another break here on The Left versus the Right. All of you can sit back and just absorb the poignant discussion that we've had here. You can't turn the dial to any place that will give you anything better, but you can stay on the dial, and we'll be right back.
It's The Left versus the Right. The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Left versus the Right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's The Left versus the Right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
We're back on The Left versus the Right. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, a Saturday afternoon, right before the election. There's Sunday early voting and the rest of today. So if you were inclined by anything we said, please go out and vote. It's something our foreparents fought for, the right to self-determination. And as a country, as a state, and as a city, we're exercising that right on Tuesday. I'm here with my good friend, Judge Richard Weinberg. He and I are in the Democratic caucus, the Democratic Common Sense caucus.
There are two of us.
There are two of us. We have meetings every other week on a Tuesday at 6, if you ever want to come. But what I want to talk about is there's an insinuating, disturbing feeling I've gotten through this whole mayoral campaign. And it has to do with what these candidates really represent. Now, in the case of Curtis Lewa, we talked about that. Curtis somehow has it in his head that he's going to become mayor. And then with former Governor Cuomo, he's been in a lot of races. He lost the primary to Mamdani. He might lose on Tuesday. Then we come to Zohran Mamdani, who somehow keeps alive the notions of anti-Semitism, hating the Jewish people, as Governor Cuomo said, and don't just let the Jewish people be the victims of the hate. He doesn't like the police. He, has all these targets, and it makes me think that it does nothing but give to give opportunity and to give fire to other people who are extreme anti-Semites, other people who could care less what happens to the Jewish community. And I just thought that as we start to wind the program down, that we might talk about that because it has infuriated me. I don't really know where to express it other than on this program, but it continues to dictate and pervade too many things that go on in this city and don't get addressed. And I don't understand, as we said before, how some of his remarks weren't addressed when he was running in the primary by his opponents.
Well, I'm in this unique situation of being born into a Jewish family with Jewish grandparents on the side, some who came from Europe, some who were born here, so I'm like the third generation, which makes me a so-called Yankee in part. I've always felt at home in America. I've always felt this is my country. I still know and love this country. This country has provided a safe haven for all kinds of people of different religious and racial, ethnic backgrounds. But for the first time, Governor, in my lifetime, I fear for the safety of the Jewish community in the United States of America. I fear because the radical left-wing socialists are anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. I fear because the Islamist movement in the United States is anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. I see it happen.
And by the way, they don't have a great simpatico with black people either.
Well, but
it's just not as
overt.
Overt.
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because you go back to what we were talking about earlier. The whole phenomena and it's in some of their religious tracts and in their political tracts. I say it's hegemonic. It's about domination of their world view. And they have very little tolerance, any kind of divergent point of view, freedom of speech, of thought, of religious practices. And for those people who believe that, well, it's just a Jewish question and you get rid of the Jews, there'll be no problem after that because everything will be fine. Well, but then they have no tolerance for the Hindus, and they have no and they have no tolerance for the Buddhists, and they have no tolerance for the Christians. A large number of our fellow citizens are Christian. This, after all, is a Judeo-Christian country. More emphasis on Christian in terms of population. Culturally, it's Judeo-Christian, but population-wise, it's Christian. And the Christian community is up next. They've proven time and time again, Islamists, that they will rid any country where they have power of the Christian community. They assassinate, they enslave, they make sex slaves out of the kids, they raid the schools, they burn the schools down to kill them. They go into the churches and burn them down and kill them. These are not a tolerant group, these Islamists. And so people mindlessly think, it's the Jews versus the Muslims. It's not the Jews versus Muslims. The Jews, by the way, just want to live in peace.
Right.
It's the Jews versus extremists, whether it's the radical socialists who are intolerant of them or the radical Islamists. And again, I point out, this is not a Muslim issue. This is an Islamist issue. It's a perversion of an otherwise respectable religion.
And that is a sentiment that needs to be stated and restated, that Muslims live among us. My building adjoins a mosque at 96th and 3rd Avenue. They have programs there and that kind of thing. Never a problem. But you have an extremist group that would probably come up and shut them down because they interact with the rest of the community so well. But the danger that we face with these kind of unresolved angers and hatred that are founded on nothing but evil are, I think, just it's just rising within people who are affected or see it going on and disdain it. And I think it's one of the issues that's not going to get any redress from the man who will probably be our next mayor.
And remember, I started this conversation by saying it's not just the United States. You have this worldwide phenomenon of this cancer of anti-Semitism. It's all over Europe now. All over Europe. And you have communities in England and in France where they have total domination of those areas. You have half a dozen mayors in England. You have the mayor of London who have sympathies for Islamists and who tolerate civil disorder and
I
violence.
didn't know that.
Yes. This is, so what happened is, two of the great problems Europe had is they wanted to show how nice they were. So they had the European Union said if you get a passport into one country, then you can get through, go anywhere else without a passport.
Right.
So they moved freely amongst Europe, which is the reason you had this Brexit, this withdrawal from the European Union by England, because they were tired of being overrun by these migrants. And a lot of them were illegal migrants. Now, nobody said you're welcome here to come to England. You want to come here and visit, that's swell. But nobody here said you could populate here, change the demographic component
right.
of the country, make it an Islamist country. But that's what Merkel did when she opened up the doors to Germany. They got into Germany and they spread throughout Europe. So you now have enclaves all across Europe, which caused real dissension. And you have the rise of center-right or even right-wing groups and political parties trying to oppose this illegal migration, which throws a threat to their own cultures. And England is a perfect example of that, and France is an example of that because they have places where you cannot go in France, outside of Paris, where you can't go in with your own police and your own military because it's run by them, have self-sustaining population that has no buy-in to the larger culture. Fundamentally, people do not have a right to come in to another country and demand that that country changes their culture when they come in.
And we're certainly seeing a lot of that right here in our country. We're talking with Judge Richard Weinberg. I'm David Paterson. We're on the left versus the right.
Even though we're both in the center.
Even though we're both in the center. But we play it on TV sometimes. It's really kind of a poor note to be closing on, but it's really very dangerous. And the worst thing about it is that some of the people who are the most activist and the ones who are the most involved have no idea why they are. They just, have gotten it in their minds, as I guess has happened in many societies where you grow up and there's a certain a group of people that you could associate with and a certain group of people you couldn't. And I think that's, really fostering this kind of meteoric rise in anti-Semitic behavior. And people now starting to say out loud what they used to keep to themselves. They were haters before, but now they're vocal. Well, and I think we got a big problem.
There's a different kind of anti-Semitism. When I was growing up, there was always what I would call the polite anti-Semitism, the country club anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. So if you were Jewish, you couldn't get into a particular country club or live in a particular neighborhood, or certain industries or firms were not welcoming to the Jewish community. So what the Jews did is they established their own groups where they would be allowed in. Some would join, others would just keep to themselves. They created their own fraternities and colleges, and they had certain universities that there were substantial Jewish communities, so they would go there and feel fine about it. Other schools were less welcoming, so they avoided them. Some of the so-called white shoe, old line WASP law firms.
Oh, absolutely.
Would keep Jews out. But not just Jews, would be Italians, would be Irish, would be blacks as well. But the white shoe firms kept it out. So the Jews founded their own law firms. Certain businesses just were noted that you just didn't go in if you were Jewish. But the Jewish experience, and this is, and again, as you know, because you and I are friends for a long time, I'm very secular. Fundamentally, I guess I'm a deist. I'm mostly a deist when I get on a plane. But I'm pretty much of a deist. I think there's some sort of force that created us all. I don't believe in the randomness of Big Bang. There's got to be some force behind it. I can't explain how that force got here, and I don't know that it personifies with long flowing robes and white hair what we want, and I don't know who the Godhead is. Where, the Greeks and the Romans had multi-gods. The Jews are often given credit or blame for monotheism. It's not true. There are other religions that had that phenomenon of one true God. The whole concept of having one true God is dangerous because everybody says, well, it's my true God, not your true God.
Yes, exactly.
That's dangerous. That's a dangerous thing. It worries me. But the one thing I have to say about my cultural group, whatever country allowed the Jewish community to participate, to thrive and to prosper, were beneficiaries. They brought education, they brought science, they brought culture, they brought economic development, they brought technology, whatever the times were. Wherever they went, they felt a larger obligation to contribute to society that allowed them to live and to flourish. So if you go around every major city that had a Jewish population, large numbers of the hospitals were created by Jewish money and Jewish doctors. And they didn't have to be named Mount Sinai, for example.
Right.
There were plenty of places all across this country with the Jewish populations where they gave charitable organizations, leaders of philanthropic organizations. As you know, leaders of the National Association of Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. The general counsel was a nice Jewish boy named Jack Greenberg, who worked with Thurgood Marshall in Brown versus Board of Education, which desegregated the schools. Mm-hmm. So they've always tried to give back. That's part of the culture that we're all raised with. Whether you're religious or you're not religious, the Jewish community has always felt a moral obligation to make a fairer society, give people an opportunity. Not a quality of result, but a quality of opportunity, and to be fair.
So I have this final note for you, Your Honor. I'm in high school. My best friend's name is Jonathan. He's Jewish. There was another kid in the school who was Italian and was considered to be in a family that was
connected?
Underworld, yes. One afternoon, this kid punches my friend Jonathan in the face. When we get back to class, the teacher does a whole lecture on hate and that kind of thing. I mean, it was incredible. So Jonathan and I lost touch over the years, but we reconnected about 10 years ago. We're having dinner, and I said, when you had that fight with that guy that day, I always thought he beat you. And Jonathan said, it could have been worse. I could have beaten him. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us on The Left versus the Right. I'm David Paterson with Judge Richard Weinberg. And, we needed a little upbeat tone to end this program. Stay tuned for John Sterling. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?